Now it's on to part 2. So we want to thank everyone for joining us for this interview of Kattie and Allan Mount, co-hosts of Marriage on a Tightrope Podcast, which is all about navigating a Mormon mixed faith marriage. We're grateful for this podcast and the influence it's having. We're excited to promote it to help more people find value in it. And we spent the first hour, for those who are, Bill Reel has admitted to me that he always skips my first episode.
I've heard that.
Whatever it is, he skips it. So Bill Reel, welcome to part 2. Welcome to part 2 of my interview with the Mounts. Since you didn't listen to the first episode we talked about Kattie and Allan's upbringing in the church. Kattie coming from a mixed race marriage, where her dad was from Tonga, mother from Ogden area, but growing up mostly either in California or in Springville, Utah, and what her awesome upbringing was like with a family that was very communicative and emotionally connected and sharing of emotions and very loving and open and supportive, open home to others and very faithful and spiritual. And then Allan talked about his upbringing in Southern California, sports, but also faith and church, UCLA, volleyball, lots of cool stuff, and also some typical adolescent struggles with a lot of chastity related stuff, but how he bounced back and they met on their mission. And you had no hope. You had no chance. You had to end up married.
That's right.
Whether you wanted it or not.
Whether we wanted to or not.
Hopefully.
I'm glad we wanted it. It was
yeah,
nice.
we both wanted it.
So you'll have to go back and listen now, Bill Reel, because that story is epic. It's gripping and it's serendipitous, and or if you're faithful, it's miraculous.
Right.
Like that story. How could you deny the divinity of your being meant for each other? So what happened? What happened?
What happened?
So you got engaged within a few weeks of knowing each other, both at BYU. What happened?
That's right. I mean, I don't know. I think we could probably skip from 2004 to 2013 or so. Is there anything in there that we should talk about?
Okay, so you got married in 2004.
We got married in 2004 in the Salt Lake Temple.
Did you have kind of an understanding of what your life was going to be like?
No.
Did you talk about like, here are the commitments,
No, we just kind of understood it. I mean, you understand what goes into a temple marriage. That's the commitment you're going to make. You're going to raise your kids in the church. I mean, that's what you're getting yourself
Faithful.
into. Yeah, you know that.
And we both had really good models in our own parents. I mean, my parents had been together, worked through things. Allan's parents, the same thing.
Former bishop.
Right. And so I feel like we had really good role models, and we knew that we were just in it. There's no getting out of it.
You're on the train.
You're on the
Mormon train.
You're going to have to just work ththrough stuff. We had this awesome wedding. It was Polynesian.
Oh my gosh. It was great.
And my mom is surprised. So we, in like Polynesian culture, you'll have like a full dinner, sit down dinner. And if you are like Tongan marrying another Tongan, these celebrations can last 4, 5, 6 hours. The whole night, right? We
With
were
like dancers
and dancing and
everything.
the pig and the presentation of all of the gifts and the money, right? You know, you see
money.
people putting money on the dancers.
The dancers are oiled up.
Oh, it's not a money tree.
No, and people go
Money
up and they
dancers.
literally stick money to
It's kind of like
to
a
the
Mormon
dancers.
version of a strip show.
It's a Tongan Mormon
It's a
strip show.
Tongan-
Like
That's
greased up young Mormon girls
Yes.
dance Tongan Mormon girls.
Sometimes they're older ladies. It's aunts. And
And you
sometimes
slip
it's
in the-
uncles. And you just
slip
put it in their
20,
hair.
You slip in the
put that,
$20 bill.
You
and
throw it above their heads.
And then you join them on the dance floor. So you put the money and then you go behind the dancer and you just kind of start doing your dances as well. It's beautiful. It's a really fun event.
and
you rake in the dough.
So we rake in the dough. But the funny thing, I didn't really know this until after, is they'll collect the money and then they'll redistribute it so that people can throw it again. So it's dancer after dancer with some new money coming in, but also just the money that's already been collected. So it just looks like you're getting thousands of dollars thrown at you all night long. And but that was really fun. My mom, Allan's mother and grandmother were there, and they were both Scottish. And so my mom surprised them with these bagpipers from Payson,
wow.
who played, and they did a jig on the dance floor. I mean, it was
It was magical.
This is a multicultural festival.
Tongan.
It's just your traditional Tongan Scottish
wedding.
I mean, we all know how
Mormon.
those go.
Mormon.
Tongan Scottish wedding. That's right.
White Utah Mormon Tongan.
You know how it
Scottish.
is. Everyone knows what those are like.
It was awesome though. It was magical.
It was great. Towards the end, her uncle was being a little bit verbose. And we're two Mormon kids that are like, okay,
We gotta get out of here.
We've got a room at the Grand America, and we're going to New York tomorrow, so let's get out of here.
Yeah, so we leave, and then that kind of just sets us on this course. Allan is in school full time. I'm in school full time. I'm working a part-time job, and he's playing volleyball. So the first couple years, life's busy, but it's fun.
Okay, wait, really quick. How did the volleyball team do while you were at BYU?
So we won
part of the story, but
the BYU team. Well,
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no,
We
it
didn't miss it.
goes right into this.
the 2004 is the last time that BYU men's won the national championship. That was
While you were at UCLA. Or
that was right.
While your
it was
mission.
2 weeks before I got home from the mission.
Okay.
So I signed my letter of intent. I signed my letter of
with
intent.
the winning team.
And
right?
then, I signed the letter of intent before they won.
Okay.
And then we went.
Oh, okay.
And then they won.
Oh, okay.
2 weeks later.
Yeah, that was a big deal when BYU won the
That's a
national
big deal.
championship.
It was a very big deal.
Yeah.
And then I got home. They were good there. I played for 1 year while I was there and stopped 2 years short of eligibility because we decided to start our family. And we decided to start our family because we went into the Provo Temple and we went in to do laundry. We were like, where do you need most help? And they're like, we could really use some people in the laundry. So we went into the laundry room. The laundry room's like one of the only places you can talk at normal levels. So we're just doing laundry, talking to people, or talking to each other rather. And was it I that asked the question?
Well, at the time, in the back of my head, my sister had already been married and she had struggled with infertility. And so we started talking about that. And then, we said, well, when should we start our family?
Yeah, when you ask that question in the temple, the feeling generally is you should start now.
It's like, wait 7 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Wait
It's
7
okay.
years.
These spirits
have a career. Get a graduate degree, Katie.
Wait till you're financially
Wait
stable.
till you're financially stable.
And then you can start.
That's always the answer.
We left
in the Provo Temple.
That's right. We left feeling we got to start this family. I had a scholarship, and because of NCAA rules, I couldn't get a job. I couldn't earn money, so I had to quit volleyball. So I quit volleyball.
Well,
And lost your scholarship.
And forwent my scholarship.
The thing is I seriously thought I'm going to have the same infertility issues my sister will. So we got to get a jump start on it.
Going.
And
That didn't work out.
And I mean, I was older because at the time, you had to go on a mission when you're 21.
Yeah, you're like 23.
That's right. I came home. I came home, and I kid you not, someone said to me, look, you only have a small window of time to find someone that will take you at your age.
At your advanced age.
She
was 23.
I was 23.
Yeah, that's old, Grandma.
It was. And so I said, I was like, well, we need to get moving. It's time 24. I need to have, a baby. And so I thought, oh, it'll take years. No. The next month.
Oh.
It took one time,
Right.
maybe two. And then I was pregnant.
So by the time I graduated, it took me a long time to graduate because I had to get a full-time job, and then I'm still taking classes.
So wait, did you have a baby in less than a year?
No. At night, we were married 9 months when we started. And so a year and a half into our marriage,
Okay.
he came.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a honeymoon baby like some couples will share. But by the time I graduated, I had 2 kids. And when those kids start coming and you're still in school and you're working 50 to 60 hours a week trying to get by, man, I went from at UCLA, like a 2.9 GPA, got back from the mission. Now I'm a 4.0 student because the mission taught me some good habits. And then the kids start coming and it was just C's get degrees. Let's get it. So
what were you studying?
Economics with a business
Why?
minor.
Just
It was the shortest major at the time.
yeah.
I enjoyed math, and that was a big part of it.
Economics is cool. I really
That was
enjoyed
great.
my economics
It was great.
classes. What were you studying?
So I was studying at the time, I was an English major with an emphasis in creative writing.
Oh.
They have a creative writing degree now, but it was English.
Did you finish while you were there?
I did not. I finished short of like a year, year and a half.
That's why I took Margie away when she had a year to go.
Yeah.
It's one of my regrets. She finished, but through correspondence courses. And
Katie's going to finish. We've talked about it.
I really regret that.
That's in my future. I want to.
Yeah.
But, you just do what you have to do at the time.
Mormon train.
That's right. 2 kids.
Yeah.
Working, both of us working.
Were we working? What were your part-time jobs? What were they?
I was in cell phone sales.
Oh, like back in the day.
Yeah, this was in the heyday.
Kiosk.
Like in a kiosk at a mall.
Oh, yeah.
This is like Nokia was king when I started selling phones.
Swedish, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I mean, ever since I was 19, I worked in and out of the hospital. So I was always like a secretary or receptionist or office manager. Utah Valley. So I worked in a few different orthopedics office. And then I worked about 7-8 years in the emergency room at Utah Valley. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
So for a while.
So you're a hardworking couple, having kids, finishing the degree.
That's right. Yeah. Finished the degree. Law school was a thought, but it was like a blip.
Yep.
But then by the time I graduated to the cell phone thing, I'd moved into management and it was like, well, I'm making pretty good money, so I'll just keep doing this.
So we purchased a house right after our second son was born.
July 2007 is when we bought a house. We didn't pray about that one in the Provo
we did
temple.
not. We just
that's the
we bought it.
crash?
The crash.
Yeah, that was the
happened.
crash.
So we bought the townhome for $150,000. It was worth $170,000. Her parents owned it, so they gave us a little sweetheart
They gave us a
deal.
break. Yeah.
And for 5 years later, we short sold it for $105,000. So it had,
5 years later.
yeah, it had plummeted.
Yeah.
Oh,
Allan
I
lost his
my
job.
and so we moved in with her parents for a year in Springville.
Oh,
It was hard. It was really
That
hard.
was in 2012.
And we had just had baby number 3 when we moved in with my parents, and they were, really like so good of them to take us in.
Yeah, really.
And
we're talking like this is 2 decades ago. This is like 7 years ago.
this is 7 years ago. No, it was.
It feels like a different lifetime.
It feels like a different lifetime. It does. And Allan got his now job through a mission friend.
companion referred me.
Yeah.
We're still good friends. And that job ended up working out. They were based out of Murray. And so after a year with her parents, we paid off some debt and got to a place where we could move up to Murray.
From Murray.
Yeah. So
I've been to your old Murray home.
Yeah, we were in Taylorsville.
Yes, you have been to the Murray home. So
Yes,
we
you
just
have.
actually, John,
Sold it, yeah.
I don't know if you know this.
closed.
You don't. I'm about to tell you. We are moving today.
Awesome.
Most of our last night was our
Yesterday.
first night in our new home.
Oh, cool. Congrats.
2 doors down.
2 doors away from where we currently were.
Same neighborhood, everything.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We initially moved to Taylorsville, and my sister, who you have not heard from yet, but my sister Colleen was a school teacher in Utah at the time, and she moved into our basement. That's how we were able to afford it. So she paid not quite half, but
Had a
much of the
mother-in-law.
rent. Mother-in-law apartment in the bottom. So we moved up to Taylorsville, and that was a big moment spiritually for us. Because when we moved up, we were moving out of a ward that we knew we were going to be temporarily in, her home ward. And we moved up to this new ward. And do you remember the conversation we had
Yeah.
where I turned to her and I said, we can be whoever we want to be. They don't know us. We can work so hard and volunteer for everything. And we can come in here just like this new family that is going to save this ward, not save the ward like they need saving, but we're going to do everything we can.
Build the ward.
And do it
Zion.
the right way. And exactly.
Build and strengthen Zion.
And I think part of this was that we were in a really transient ward before.
Yeah.
So we lived in townhomes and people were constantly moving in and out.
Yep.
And it was, they would split it and split it again and split it again because they were building like crazy. And so we didn't really have, we had friends in the neighborhood and in the ward. We didn't really feel like we belonged to anywhere. There was nowhere that was really like counting on us to be there to do the job. And so when we moved to Taylorsville, we had already scoped out the new ward and we knew that they could use us.
Yeah.
And so we just decided we are going to go full-fledged. We're going to go in there guns a-blazing and we're going to volunteer for everything. And I was pregnant at the time with number 4. And we moved in the spring of 2013.
It was like June.
It was June.
And then within 4 weeks, I was called as Elders Quorum president. right at the beginning, they're like, "Who do you want to be your counselors?" I'm like, "I don't even know their names. I don't know anybody's names in this ward." But so we went in super hard. We, traditionally, like you do, we spoke that first week, and we spoke in the word of wisdom. You remember that?
We did.
That was fun. Anyway, and being called as Elders Quorum president, I was going to be...
The bishop's like, fresh meat.
That's right.
Fresh meat.
He's not burned out yet. Yeah, and we loved our bishop. He continues to be great, but I'm extended that call, and just a general overview. I loved that calling, and you want to talk to someone that loves home teaching or ministering now. I still think it's the coolest thing in the world if it's done the way that it should be. Mm-hmm. But I'm called, and before I could get set apart, so this is within a month of us moving to Taylorsville, we get a phone call one night from my oldest brother, Jason. It's about 9 p.m., and I'm like, ooh, it's 11 o'clock in Georgia. That's where my whole family is now. And I answer the phone, and I can just tell immediately that something was wrong. And my brother Jason said, Dad's been in a car accident, and he's in the hospital now. They're checking him. It looks like he has a neck injury, but we don't know much more than that.
Was your dad in Georgia?
Yes, he was in Georgia.
Why was he not in California?
Our whole family, we skipped
There's
that.
mass exodus.
Between 2006 to 2009, our whole family moved over to Georgia.
Okay.
And
the majority of the grandkids were there. So and Jim, my father-in-law, his dream was to have a house on the lake and live out his retirement days with the grandkids and the lake. And so they found a house in Georgia, and they purchased this beautiful home on the lake.
2 boats, and we go there. We're next in about a week and a half. We're going for the month of July. That's why we're taking a break.
Yeah.
But
so you got that call.
We get that call from my oldest brother who tells me that, and I get off the phone, and I mean, you can imagine shell shock. And I walk out, tell Katie, and I'm like, we just don't know what's happening. He calls back within another hour or so and says, it looks like there's pretty severe neck damage to his spine, and
they said that
we need everyone to get out here.
Yeah. Well, they said that he was instantly a quadriplegic, and that's what they knew right off the bat.
There's very small chance that the swelling could diminish and feeling could come back, but even on that first night, they didn't think that was going to happen. So 4 of my 6 siblings and their families were already in Georgia. My sister, who's living in our basement, and I were the only ones out of Georgia. That's a lie. I have a sister in West Virginia.
Yeah.
But they call us and say, you guys, we don't know if he's going to make it. You need to get out here. And so we immediately make plans. And the next day, just the 2 of us go out to Georgia. Her family helped watch the kids. And for a week, he lived in the hospital. And we had... In that week, I still look back at that week, and it's hyper spirituality. Everyone, the family is all supporting each other. You're sharing stories. He's awake, but he can't talk because he's got a breathing tube. So he's spelling out things using this board with this pen, and he can communicate very, very little. But he's asleep most of the day and sedated. And any hospital experiences you want to share?
Well, I do want to say the woman who, they were on a 2-lane highway, and Jim was on his way to meet his boys for a late night movie. And
it wasn't even a good movie. Wolverine Origins.
Wolverine. And they're on this 2-lane highway, and this woman who's 2 cars, on the other side going opposite direction. She is one on prescription pain medication that's not hers. She is driving a car that is not hers and has no insurance. And she swerves out to pass a car, even though there's cars coming. And the car right in front of her, she barely misses, but then she slams into Jim's car, and he goes...
Driver's side door.
Yeah, and he goes down an embankment, and she takes off.
So she
leaves the scene. And the car directly behind him is his teenage neighbor. And so he pulls off and goes to him and says, Mr. Mount, are you okay? And he's the one who calls the paramedics, and then he's airlifted to Atlanta. And so the way in which he was hit and everything is so traumatizing for all of us. Because we just can't imagine someone leaving the scene and leaving him there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this podcast hasn't been about him, and it could have been. I mean, he was just the rock of our family, and there was never a moment where we were, at least from the kids' perspective, in any kind of financial danger. He held us strong, and so that how he left us so suddenly, and then the way that he did, seeing this powerful 6'8" man who
stand-up guy.
Yeah, in the last 6 months of his life, he literally on his hands and knees was building a home for a member of his ward who couldn't afford it, and he put a lot of his own money and time and effort into that. And so, for a week, we were dealing with the reality of he's going to be home. This man who's been active his whole life. He's 69 when he got hit. And now he's going to be a quadriplegic. It was the same neck injury that Christopher Reeves has, for a point of reference. Mm-hmm. He would have been able to speak again, but that was really difficult. And towards the end of it, the day that we came home from the hospital and came back to Utah, he didn't regain consciousness. And there was this feeling of he's not going to make it. Nobody knew that yet. But people that had visited the room, grandchildren, our own children, my own siblings, the next day or so after we left, said it doesn't feel like he's here anymore. So literally the day after we got back from Georgia, they called us and said, we need to make a decision. Are we going to pull life support or are we not going to? And the doctor said his body is completely shut down. His organs aren't working. His brain, there's no activity. It's not working. So on Monday night, they pulled the plug, and we watched my dad die over FaceTime on Facebook, and that was really difficult. It was, clearly, I remember sitting next to my sister and Katie in the room at our Taylorsville home and turning to them and just saying, this is so stupid. Like I want to scream, and I just want to go punch something. And my sister said, go jump on my bed and yell into a pillow. And I kind of gathered myself and we hung up the phone and there were siblings on the phone saying, go towards the light, Dad. And like, we love you. We're so proud of you. And it was just, it was over. The next month, right then we got the kids and we told them, like, this is what's going on. This is what happened. And we went in the backyard and just lit a campfire and roasted marshmallows and just kind of tried to enjoy some time with our kids. And then, oh yeah, sorry.
Thanks.
Katie, what are you feeling? As soon as his dad was brought up, I saw you start to tear up, and that was several minutes ago. Are you comfortable sharing what you've been feeling the past few minutes?
Oh no, I just, it was so hard. I was pregnant with number 4 at the time. And one of the days, this is actually funny, one of the days that his dad was conscious and talking to us, Allan said, Dad, we're naming our baby boy after you. And I was like, what?
We are? Okay.
But it just didn't matter. And anyway, and it just was, it was hard. All of those memories come flooding back to me. And, I've lost a loved one. I've lost lots of people. I lost my sister, but through the years, I've lost grandparents and aunts and uncles and a lot of people. So death was not something that was new to me. And I had been to a lot of funerals, but it was for Allan, wouldn't you say?
All my grandparents had passed by that point, but the dad passing was certainly
a parent's a different deal.
A little different. And that next month was, I still look back at the next month after he died with really fond memories, as strange as it sounds. His funeral was the coolest day. It was sad, of course, but me and my 3 brothers put on his ugly sweaters and we wrote a parody song to one of his favorite songs.
What was the song?
Cameron, if you're watching, remind me, Tijuana something. I don't remember exactly what the song was. If we can get you the audio, maybe we can release it. But my brother Cameron played the guitar, and we sang the song, all three brothers of ours, and it was all centered around my dad's terrible dad jokes, and
it was a celebration of life. It wasn't a funeral. It wasn't a sad thing. It was a celebration, and that definitely helped. And they had only been in Georgia for like 5 or 6 years at that point.
Yeah, so the Ward community.
Yeah, I mean, but it was huge. I mean, he had such an impact on them there that there were hundreds and hundreds of people who showed up for the funeral. And it was packed. And then after that, so many of his loved ones wanted something in California. So Allan and I went after the funeral to do a memorial service in California with all of the ward members in Santa Barbara that he had served, and that was actually probably one of the best experiences of all of it.
We just open mic night. I told the story of what had happened because they needed to process their grief as well, and then everyone just got up and told stories about my dad, stories I had never heard. They had some kid that he went surfing with my dad when he was 17, and he showed up and told stories, and it was really cool stuff.
And so, I mean, I think that his story is really important to tell because I think that it is the reason why Allan started looking into church truth claims.
Yeah, it was the beginning of the chinks in the armor for me emotionally. Within a few months after the hyper focus on the family, everyone goes back to their own lives. And so now there's the support system. You're still grieving, but the constant messages, the constant phone calls, the checking in, that kind of goes away. And you're kind of left to deal with this new reality. And I remember having a conversation with one of my family members of like, do you feel Dad? Like, I just don't even feel him anymore. I can go to the temple. I can pray. It feels so permanent. It feels like he's gone. And this family member said the same thing. Like, yeah, I don't really feel him. And for me, that didn't really start a conscious crisis in my mind of, oh my goodness, this isn't real. But it kind of set me up emotionally to look at things differently and think about things differently. I had a decision within a few months of my dad passing to stay with my company or go to a different company. And because of how focused I was on him, I was praying to my Heavenly Father, but my business-minded dad was in my prayers too, of just like, help me know what is the best thing to do here. And there was absolutely a stupor of thought, and not in a good way. I could not make the decision. I couldn't figure it out. And I ended up choosing to leave my company, and then 3 days later regretting it and going back and pleading for my job back. And I'm still with the same company today.
What field?
It's a technology company. It's called In Moment. We do customer satisfaction management for companies.
Nice.
And I'm on the sales team. So I was in 2014 now, probably 7-8 months later.
Wait, I just have to say,
yeah, please.
The gospel element to first of all, the Mormon element of ward members and stake members and missionary companions and family members all rallying around the death of a loved one.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like it can't be probably overstated how powerful that can be. Yeah. Just like a wedding.
Yeah.
Just like youth programs, funerals, right? Like that's some of the most powerful memories you'll ever have around how Mormonism came together to not only support you and your family and honor your dad, right? And all the memories, but also theologically, how you then would frame something so tragic.
Yeah.
Talk about that if you want, either of you or both of you.
No, yeah. I mean, I still had this big hope. It was like, hey, my dad's graduated. He's on the other side.
Yeah, he's serving a mission.
Right.
It happened.
Now, and a few people, even back then, and this is before any of my faith crisis or before I knew anything about any problems with history or waking up to realities of LGBT issues or anything like that. None of that I'm all in, Elders Quorum president, all in. People had said a few times, whether it's through text, through Facebook, or in person, said, God needed him on the other side, or he fulfilled his purpose here on earth. Even back then, I did not accept that. And
you didn't like that?
No.
Yeah, some people don't like that.
I didn't like that. It was,
it's usually what other people tell you. Yeah. The bereaving aren't loving that. But, but the ward members, That's what they tell you.
Yeah.
Say, oh, you're great. It's a celebration. The Lord needed him.
Yeah.
You know?
The way that he passed is probably a big part of it.
Yeah.
And if he would have just had a massive heart attack while he's sleeping, maybe I can
When
get on
he's
board.
95.
Right. But
Yeah.
he's 69 and he's hit
Yeah.
by a drunk driver.
Yeah.
Driver under the influence. And so I just said, no, I don't blame God for what happened. I blame this woman who made a poor decision and ended his life early before it should have ended.
Tragic.
I was never angry at God. I never even crossed my mind. It was just like, we have our free agency and this lady ruined it. she made a big mistake.
But you were still grieving and mourning. And,
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course,
Were you
yeah.
going to say something, Katie?
No, we all went through the grief cycle. Like I said, I felt like I had some of the tools to deal with his death better. I mean, I wasn't trying to compare myself, but I felt like I was dealing with things a little bit better only because I had lost a sister. I had lost really important people for a long time before it got to that point. Not to diminish how he was feeling or how he was handling it, but it was hard, and I think everyone's always well-meaning.
Yeah.
You know, they just say things that they think will
Sure.
help you. So I don't discount that at all.
And just really quickly, in-law relationships can sometimes be tricky. But since I saw you tearing up, what did Allan's dad mean to you?
I didn't get enough time with him because I'd only been in the family for like 5 or 6 years when he passed, and that was hard because we would spend every summer with him, but his older siblings had like years and years and years with him. So
What do you remember about him?
that was hard.
What do you remember?
Oh,
about him?
he was larger than life, in both in stature and in personality. I would get really annoyed with my kids, and he always had these great sayings like, "Hey, you're acting like kids again."
Acting like kids again.
And he'd take my kids out and he'd build things with them, and he'd teach them to fish, and he would play with them. And he didn't love the baby stage. He wasn't like a baby grandpa. He was the kids are getting a little older and you can talk and you can reason with them and you can teach them. That was the sweet spot for him. And my mother-in-law was very much the baby stage. So it was a good combination. But
So they were assets in your life.
yeah,
for
and
you.
you know, Allan and I made the decision to get married like really quickly, and Allan's dad sat us down and said, maybe you should think about it. Maybe you should
Maybe next
wait
August
a little,
instead of December.
wait a little bit of time. And Allan said, Dad, if you want us to get married in the temple, you got to let us get
It'll be
married.
December.
It's going to be December.
You know my past.
And his dad, without question, just said, okay, we'll support you.
We'll
And
support
that's
you, whatever you decide to
and
do.
that's how he was. Whatever you decided, when you decided to do something, he supported you full fledged. And at the beginning of our marriage, he wanted to help us with finances, which I thought was really intrusive of him. But everything he did was with good intentions. And so I feel sad that my kids don't know him. My older kids barely remember him, and my younger kids don't know him at all. So I think a lot of my grief still comes from what could have been, not necessarily what happened, but what could have been, and the ripple effects that it's caused in the family.
Yeah, there's nothing like a great grandpa or grandma
Right.
to
Yeah.
your kids if
Yeah.
they're doing it right.
Yeah. And they were great
What a
in-laws.
loss. Yeah.
Yeah, they were awesome.
Oh, okay.
Let's get something lighter.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about a faith crisis.
Let's do a quick karaoke song.
Right.
Don't Stop Me Now by Freddie Mercury. Go.
We'll do a Beach Boys song for your dad. How about
That's
that?
right. He
Yeah.
was a California boy.
Oh,
Yeah.
baby, California.
Yes, love
He had a
those
deep
guys.
voice, and
Blue Moon.
yeah.
If any of my siblings are watching, that was his,
Yeah,
that was his big song.
that was it.
That
Yeah.
was his big song. Yeah, it makes me
Yeah.
happy when our kids like to listen to the Beatles and
Yeah.
all those old guys because my dad loved it. So to wrap up kind of the story of my dad, Katie mentioned not processing things well. I didn't process very healthily with my dad passing. For a few years, I couldn't look at pictures of him. I basically just ignored the fact that he ever existed. That combined with the timing of my initial faith crisis was bad for my mental health. So in 2014, I was preparing for a elders quorum lesson and somehow found the gospel topics essays.
So wait, I have to pause you for a second.
That was a pretty abrupt jump. Go ahead.
No. This is something that it never ceases to amaze me. So Mormon Stories starts in 2005, right? And of course, we've got Fawn Brody's No Man Knows My History, published in 1945.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've got the Tanners doing their thing in the 60s and 70s and 80s. We've got Sunstone coming up in the dialogue in the 60s, Sunstone in the mid 70s, and then we've got the whole Mormon internet starting around 2004 with Times and Seasons and By Common Consent, and then we've got Mormon Stories, and then we've got Mormon Expression, and then that leads to 2013, which is Kate Kelly, and then me, and all this sort of burgeon, the CES letter, Jeremy Runnels, and all that. How much of that were you aware of in 2013?
You named one thing that we were aware of.
Which is the year that I gave my TED Talk, about LGBT stuff, and the year Kate and I got our letters.
Yep.
Or the year before we got our letters.
Sure.
We got our letters in
how
2014.
we knew about one of the things that you said? I didn't know who you were at that time.
And I'm not saying I'm a big deal. This is about the Mormon bubble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who did we know? Out of all those things, we knew one of those things. I'd never heard of Sunstone. I'd never heard of the Tanners. None of it. Who did we know?
Kate Kelly served with us on our mission.
What?
She was.
Yeah, she did go to Spain.
She went to our mission.
So we knew
served
Kate.
with her.
We actually knew Kate really well. She was just 6 weeks younger than us.
What was she like as a missionary?
What would you expect? That's how she was. She was extremely hardworking.
Female AP.
She should have been. She was extremely hardworking.
Such a hard worker.
We have anecdotes from a few of her district leaders where she would get transferred into a new area, and she would go to her leader, her priesthood leader, district leader, and say, "You do not need to tell me what to do.
You do not need my numbers.
I look. If you just leave me alone, I will work hard, and you do not have to worry about anything."
And she did.
And she did. She was a very hard worker.
She was a very hard worker.
Yeah.
She was a great
So
missionary.
out of everything you just mentioned, Kate was the only thing that we ever hit our radar. So we knew about ordained women. I sent her a Facebook message in the middle of ordained women and said, "Hey, we think." I just remember saying, "Good for you, standing up for what you think." It didn't go much deeper than that, though.
We actually ran into her at the airport when we were on our way see Dad. Right, it was the day after the car accident when we were leaving to go and see his.
We ran into her in the
Dad.
airport.
We ran into her at the airport
on the way to Georgia.
Yeah.
So we said hi and good for you.
So that was our knowledge. Kate was the only person we knew.
Yeah. Crazy,
Okay.
right?
And she hadn't gotten her letter yet by
Nope.
2015.
No.
Not yet.
So I'm just and even today in 2019, 98% of U.S. Mormons are oblivious to any of the stuff that we just mentioned.
Right.
Because the bubble's so strong.
Yeah.
And you were living in Utah this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm
crazy,
never
right?
I'm never going to stop being stunned by by just how protected members are from what's going on.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
the truth, or other versions of the truth, or history, or cultural stuff. It's just a bubble. So you're in the bubble. What happens?
Yeah. I mean, I'm preparing for an elders quorum lesson. Katie's out and watching something on the TV. The kids are in bed.
I have a newborn baby.
And it's 2013.
This is 14 now.
14.
2014. I have a
Okay.
newborn baby.
Okay.
And
14.
And I stumble on the gospel topics essays as I'm preparing. I don't remember what the lesson was about, but I read in 20 minutes, I read 3 of the essays. The light ones, John. Just polygamy and Nauvoo, race in the priesthood, and Book of Abraham were the 3 that I read. None of the heaviness, I say sarcastically. I read them and my mouth was just on the floor.
Really?
Just on the floor of, oh my goodness. I had no idea. In fact, one of the central moments for me was I didn't know that Joseph was polygamist until I read that essay. The exact opposite. I had an experience on my mission where I bore testimony, as odd as it sounds, of his monogamy to some Jehovah's Witnesses that were pestering us on the street, saying that he married women that were already married and married all these women. I said, "You're crazy." I bore testimony and felt the Spirit tell me, "No, what you're saying is true. He was a monogamist." So when I read that on the church's website, it shook me hard, and I kind of put it down. Went out to Katie, sat on the couch, and just said, honey, did you know And I rattled off probably what? I don't remember exactly. I rattled off a few of these points. You know, Joseph married the women that were already married. He married a 14-year-old when he was 37. The book of Abraham, like the church says it's not written by Abraham. What is going on? And I think she can sense the panic in my voice. And also, this is the first time we've ever deviated from anything. It wasn't even a deviation. It was just like I was reading on the church website. And her response was, if you ever leave the church, I will divorce you. That's it. It's over. Now, give your disclaimer.
My disclaimer is I have zero knowledge of that conversation. I was sleep deprived. I had a brand new baby.
Baby brain.
At the time, Allan had been in a position at his work where he was literally gone every week. He was traveling out of the country. He was in the country. He was gone all the time. I really have like no memory of this at all. What I do remember of that time specifically is that he had not been processing his dad's death well. He had been looking for answers as far as like afterlife, because he couldn't feel his dad. And I thought this all attributed to this one thing. So him saying that, I don't know. I guess I didn't know what to say or how to handle that.
Sure. Well, yeah, because who expects it, right?
Right.
And your world was Mormonism.
Right.
It's your whole world.
Right.
Really quickly, as you're reading the essays that 2014 day, what are the meta thoughts going through your brain?
Gosh, it happens.
You're reading about polygamy, Book of Abraham.
Yeah.
And the thoughts, like, it can be any thought. It can be like, oh, I didn't know this, or oh, that's interesting, or oh, I wonder how I'm going to reconcile that, or oh.
Yeah, the thought was, oh, this is very different than I've ever learned. It was more than this is interesting. It was, this could be an issue. This is really weird, bad stuff. Her comment stopped me dead in my tracks, though. So when she said that, I was.
And you were still Elders Quorum president?
Yeah, I mean, I was less than a year
and
into it.
And you weren't like, were you sinning? Were you looking to sin? Were you sneaking a beer here and there? Like,
I think
how
I was
your
watching Breaking Bad at the time. That was about it. I never, no word of wisdom.
Were you
nothing.
bitter? If somebody says, "Oh, what's your dad?" You were mad at God because your dad had passed away.
No.
If somebody wants to like pin
Point
it to
to it.
some unworthiness or lack of faithfulness,
Right. I think, no, there was no sin going on. My dad's passing, the only thing that introduced to me, it wasn't even doubts. It was just emotional vulnerability is what it introduced. So I was hard working as Elders Quorum president when I found the essays originally. And this is in 2014. She says her comment, and I right then and there say, that's on the shelf. I'm not even thinking about that.
Yeah.
I'm not willing. For me, it doesn't matter what is right or wrong or true or false. It doesn't matter. Even if it's all made up, I'm not going to risk my marriage, so I'm not going there. So for the next 2 years...
2 years?
2 more years as Elders Quorum president, so 3 years total. So I kept going as Elders Quorum president. We kept serving in our ward, and I didn't look at anything else. I just kind of bore down. But because I think of all of the issues with my dad, and now I'm feeling like there's this question in the back of my mind that I'm not able to answer, my mental health just plummeted.
Meaning what?
So it manifested in physical ways. So he would have heart palpitations. He never, ever had panic attacks. Not ever.
Never had
And
anxiety.
then all of a sudden, he was having panic attacks late at night. And I would call his mom to like ask what I should do for him because that was new for us.
Yeah, the strong athlete, UCLA, BYU, 6'7" athlete. Like, you probably weren't used to that physical
Neither
weakness.
of us. No, and I remember having this panic attack, and I'm 33 years old in the fetal position with my wife handing my mom on the phone, and my mom's trying to talk me down. And that was a really scary moment. That full-fledged panic attack was scary. We had some live-ins. My sister, who lived with us in the mother-in-law apartment, was now in Georgia helping my mom because my mom, we didn't want her to be alone, and she didn't want to be alone. So my sister still lives with my mom to this day. and it's great. I love you, Colleen, if you're listening. But we had another couple move in, and at the time of this panic attack, it was Bert Fuller. He's been on Mormon Stories.
Yeah. Shout out to Bert. We love you, Bert.
Yeah, we love you, Bert. So Bert came up and gave me a blessing.
And Charlie.
And Charlie, absolutely. Bert came up and gave me a blessing for that panic attack. And
he was in your ward?
Yeah, he was in our ward.
He lived
in our house for a year.
Oh.
They lived in our basement apartment.
Yeah. Love the Fullers.
That must have been fun.
Oh,
to have them in your...
Both of them. Oh my goodness. He taught us a lot.
It was, we'd have dinner together and man, we learned a lot.
Very smart
Bert
people.
Bert and Charlie are both very intelligent.
They're very smart.
And kind, or at least from what I can tell.
They are.
We love them.
We love them.
So I went to feeling some anxiety and some depression. I went to a
really quick. As you're having this panic attack or these bouts of, is it like, oh my gosh, the church isn't true?
That's not even in my mind.
See, so it's subconscious.
Yeah. Yep.
How did you conceptualize it at the time?
The church didn't even play into it.
You're just like, I'm having panic attacks. I don't know why.
I don't know why.
What's wrong with me?
Work is stressful because I'm traveling a lot.
Yeah.
We've got a new baby.
4 kids.
But do you think it was tied to the faith crisis stuff?
100%.
Okay, but subconscious.
Now, at the time, we both thought it was he hadn't worked through his dad's death.
Oh, so it's like
it was all tied to that.
Mourning and grieving.
Yes.
Yeah. I had this, those few years I did have in my mind of, I know that there's this burning question about the church that I'm just not even going to address. So I had pushed it so far down that I wasn't even thinking about it. But it was there.
I have to tell you, listeners are resonating. Jennifer Corbett-Toon writes, that's what I've been struggling with now is the anxiety, panic attacks, and irrational fear.
Yeah.
Becky Reed Linford writes, the anxiety and panic are terrible, so sorry. Lisa writes, it's like a death finding out the truth. Lisa says, I just found the essays in September. I was a TBM for 44 years and was the Relief Society president. So anyway, and then Charlene writes, leaving the church community is very similar to the grief process of the death of a loved one.
Right.
So she's connecting the church experience with your dad.
Yeah.
And then Rosa writes, growing up fundamentalist, I'm assuming fundamentalist Mormon, it is so strange, interesting, funny that you didn't know Joseph Smith was a polygamist. Those facts were on the table. They were the table, she says,
right.
in my upbringing.
Yeah.
So anyway, just incorporating. Oh, and then Janet writes, all that information is out there, but I didn't have the desire to look and be deceived. We were taught not to look.
Right.
So just incorporating some of the comments from listeners.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in the thick of it.
For those few years.
You're not sure why. You're just thinking.
Yeah.
So mental illness, depression, anxiety.
Yeah, it was tough. I had a few bad experiences with a medical professional who kind of treated me like I was crazy. Mm-hmm. He prescribed some pretty low dose medication to help with anxiety, and I had a weird reaction, and whether it's medication or not, I went to him and said, I had this weird reaction. And the way he treated me was like, okay, you're a patient just looking for troubles. And I'm like, I'm never going back. I'm never going back. And so at that moment, this is probably in 2015 or so, I don't remember quite exactly the timeline, but I thought I'm just going to deal with it and figure out how to fix it myself.
Like white knuckle it.
Yeah. And so by the end of 2016, for whatever reason.
Well, we moved.
We did move to it. Yeah, we moved to Murray.
In the spring of 2016, the place we were renting, he was coming back from out of state. So we had to move. So we found this great place in Murray, right between Fashion Place Mall and
Wheeler
Farm. Great 1950s neighborhood. And it is, I mean, all the originals still live there.
Yeah.
And if they haven't, it's their kids that moved in. So find this great neighborhood. And we get called, we move into the ward, and right off the bat, they call me as the primary president. And I had never served in primary before. Much like Allan's experience, I had no clue who was in the ward. I didn't know anything about anyone. And so I had this like girls' night out party where I invited all the women who were my age or, a little younger, a little older. And so I could vet out who I wanted to call.
Oh, that's right.
And so I got called as a primary president, and Allan got put in as in the elders quorum again.
And that was I remember one of the first open and honest comments that Kattie has ever expressed to me about, I don't know if it's categorized as an issue, but right after the bishop told her about being primary president, I got a call from the stake president saying, we'd like you and your wife to come in and for an interview. And we went in thinking he was just going to ask me if I was going to be supportive of Kattie's primary president call. That is a busy calling. So we went into the meeting thinking that that's what the call was, but really I was being called into another elders quorum presidency. And you remember after you kind of admitted to me, like, that's a little bit frustrating. I'm called as primary president and
you're called as a counselor.
You're called as a counselor in an elders quorum, but you're the one that gets an audience with the stake president, and they don't ask you if you're going to support her, but they ask her if she's going to support me. So that was a little bit frustrating.
Was that influenced by Kate Kelly, or was that just your own personal?
I think it was just my own personal feeling. I was a little bit annoyed that, and
the disparity.
Yeah, just that, like, I was playing a supportive role, and that's fine. I don't mind that, but I felt like women should get the equal opportunity for the man to be the supportive role.
I know that's a pretty radical view that she shares.
Anyway.
Women should be equal. Yeah, so I mean, in that new ward, throughout the rest of 2016, the anxiety, the depression, it just kind of went away. I don't really can't put a reason why. It just did. And at the beginning of 2017, like as soon as my brain had kind of unraveled everything and I was feeling better, I thought, I need to figure this church thing out. I need to go back to the essays and read them and really study and really figure this out. So
This is 2 years ago.
Yeah, this is beginning of 2017. So I turned to Kattie in the car in our driveway one day in January 2017, and I say that. I'm like, I'm going to figure this church thing out. I remember that I found these essays. I'm going to go back and read them. And I just want you to know I'm now in a place where I'm going to go wherever the truth points me. And that could lead me out. That could lead me harder in. Wherever it points me, that's what I'm going to do.
And Kattie, what was that like for you?
I actually didn't have a problem with it. I said to him, I felt a lot of peace when we talked about it. And I said, yeah, go for it. Like, go ahead. In my mind, I thought, well, what's the worst that could happen? And I also felt overall just peace that whatever was going to happen will be why it should happen. And so I told Allan that, well, I feel a lot of peace about this. You should go ahead and do it. So he did.
Yeah, so I did.
You got the green light.
I got the green light.
Well, yes. Well, we made a fatal mistake because what we should have decided on is going through the information together rather than
right from the beginning.
Right from the beginning.
Well, not all believing spouses want to go there.
And I never asked the question, and she never thought of it
and
either.
I never thought of it.
And maybe you wouldn't have wanted to. But,
maybe not.
But we really feel strongly that
didn't work out.
It should have at least.
That wasn't optimal, you're saying.
Yeah.
That was not optimal.
That it should have been at least, hey, I need to go through this. I would love to do it with you so we can make sure that we're reading the right things and making the right conclusions, and let's do this together. That never came out of my mouth and never entered my head. It was just, I went through this a few years ago. I'm gonna finish what I started and hit pause on.
Okay. So you dig in.
So I dig in.
For 6 months.
Yeah, I started with the essays, did all the footnotes and followed those footnotes. CES letter played a part of it as well. I started listening to Mormon Stories. The first, Bill Reel as well, Mormon Discussions. The first few months, I would, be super, super hyper aware of the logo of the podcast I'm listening to showing on my phone. And
'cause you didn't want her knowing?
I didn't. I don't even really know why. It was just one of these like, I don't want her to think I'm obsessed with this, that I'm being led astray or whatever.
It's a little bit like porn.
Yeah,
But
It's a little bit like spiritual porn.
It's a little, yeah.
You're embarrassed. It's dark. It's hidden. It's secret. It's learning. It's.
I wanted to do this,
obsessed.
Exciting,
I didn't want her to freak out.
dark.
And so, I mean, you talk about this is a common tale. When I decided to jump in both feet into the deep end, it was, if I was busy at work or busy with family stuff, it was 4 hours a day of studying. If I wasn't and I had time, it was 8 hours. And you do that for a year. I mean, within a month, you have learned more than about the church than you have your entire life. And it mounts so quickly. Within that first month, I don't have all the clear memories on how it happened, but me and my brother Cameron were going through the same thing at the same time. I believe he made a comment to me about, did you know Joseph used a rock in the hat? And I went, whoa, yeah, I do. I just learned that. Where did you learn that? And he tells me. And now all of a sudden I've got a very close, my best friend in the world outside of my wife is my brother Cameron. We've done a podcast together for 10 years.
On what?
It's stupid. It's about video games. We actually...
There's nothing wrong with video games.
No, I know, but it's anyway. We haven't recorded in like a year and a half, but it used to be a weekly thing, and we would do parody songs, and it was a big thing. It really brought us together. So that was a big moment for me to be able to look at him and say, oh my goodness, we're going through this same thing. He's the same brother that played volleyball with me at UCLA. So very, very quickly, and you feel free to ask any detailed questions about it, but very, very quickly, I mean, it just all collapses so fast.
Were there some stories or podcast episodes or essays or issues, historical or doctrinal, that were really, really big for you? Like some it's Tom Phillips, or some it's Jeremy Reynolds, or some it's, Hans Mattson. Were there any big things? Yeah,
the number one thing for me was polygamy. I think a lot of it because I had such a specific spiritual experience that when I learned about how polygamy actually went down, again, from the church's mouth, that directly contradicted what the Spirit had told me. So all of a sudden now I'm doubting, how do I know any of my spiritual experience are valid if the church is now contradicting the Spirit?
Because polygamy can't be true, because why?
Well, I had this experience on my mission where I bore testimony of Joseph's monogamy.
Yeah.
And the Spirit told me what I was saying was true, or at least I had made that leap.
Yeah.
So at that point, I went, oh my goodness,
what can I trust?
I'm not denying, and this is actually a pretty key point of our story, and what I think helps our mixed faith marriage work is I don't look at any of our experiences, the blessing she received, any of those experiences, and deny them and say, that didn't happen, or anything like that.
That was just your brain, or that was just...
I don't do that.
Yeah.
I had the experience on my mission. I said what I said, and I felt what I felt.
Yep.
I made a leap that because of those feelings, what I was saying is true. Mm-hmm. When I realized that the entire way that I knew the church was true was no longer reliable, those personal witnesses, that's when it just started collapsing. And learning about the Book of Abraham was a huge one, and it's a very complex issue, but it was so easy to see once that spiritual witness was no longer reliable as being truthful.
What was your conclusion about polygamy, and what was your conclusion about the Book of Abraham?
Conclusion about polygamy in it was never, ever once came from God. It was never commanded of God. And I came to that conclusion extremely quickly.
Which meant what?
Well, at the time, there was a very quick moment where I thought, well, Joseph screwed up. He was a prophet, and he made an excuse to practice this awful thing, and so he's fallen. And there was a brief moment where I went, "Oh shoot, we're in the wrong church. Maybe it's the community of Christ," because they've rejected that from the get-go. That conclusion only lasted a fleeting moment because of all the other issues.
And the Book of Abraham, what did you conclude about that?
Just wrong. He made a big guess, and it was not the right guess.
It wasn't a translation.
No. It's not a translation. Okay. It's reading the words. Here's a fun story. So I'm still in the Elders Quorum presidency in 2017. I was all the way until they kind of combined the high priests and Elders Quorum in 2018. I was still in the presidency. That's after we started our podcast, but I was still in the presidency. In October of 2017, it was my turn to teach Elders Quorum. I had been speaking with the first counselor in the stake presidency about all of my issues, and I wanted to teach a lesson on the gospel topics essays. I worked with him to make sure he didn't think I was doing anything fishy, and I actually had him attend the lesson that I gave. But in that room, about 20 people, I asked the question, who knows what the gospel topics essays are? And 2 people raised their hands, me and the first counselor of the presidency, stake presidency. No one else had even heard of them. And so the entire lesson was about why people leave the church. At the time, my brother, Cameron, had just left the church with his whole family. And I had him write a little paragraph of why he left the church. I asked the elders quorum, why do people leave? And this is before I introduced the question of the essays, and they gave all the reasons you would expect. Well, I have a friend and his wife cheated on him, and that led him, out of the church because he was so bitter and he blamed God. One of my friends is just lazy, doesn't want to come to church on Sundays. One of my friends is never had a testimony to begin with. One of my friends is saying all the tropes. Yeah. One person at the end says, well, I know someone that left because of church history. And I went, oh, okay, we got there. Now let me ask the question about church gospel topics essays. I read the titles to every single one of the essays and just said, these are the essay titles. And I just read them.
What you didn't understand is those weren't meant to be read by members.
Well, yeah, according to Stephen Snow, right? And so I turned to not my wife, she wasn't there, men only. And I turned to my home teaching companion, who's kind of has this puzzling look on his face. And I say, what do you have a question? He's like, that last one, the historicity of the book of Abraham, what is that all about? And I was prepared to talk about any one of the essays, but I said, that's a good question. I just read 2 paragraphs. I read the intro to the book of Abraham that says it was written by Abraham himself, and then the paragraph that says it was not written by Abraham. And I said, basically the punchline of the entire lesson was, it's not when someone leaves, it's not as simple as something terrible is going on and they're making bad mistakes. Yeah. Can you see, whether you agree with their conclusion or not, can you see how someone would read these 2 things and go, wait a minute, this doesn't quite work. Let's listen to people. Let's hear them out. If you know someone that has left, ask them why and just listen to them. I was still in at the time, right? I had made a number of conclusions, but I had an active temple recommend. John, I still have an active temple recommend until awesome. August. That's awesome. They may have disengaged it or whatever, canceled it. But I had people afterwards saying, "Thank you, that was great. That was a really good lesson. It's important to think about these things." And so the essays and the history, played a huge part of it. From all of 2017. Dark night of the soul moments were big, and Katie had to kind of not know what was going on in my head, but see how difficult this was, and seeing some of the same ways that I was grieving my father. Now I'm grieving my faith, but not really talking about it much. Was a huge deal. And so 2017 was kind of the dark year. There was a number of we didn't tell anybody on her side of the family. On my side of the family, and during 2017, on my side of the family, 2017 was a crazy year where my brother and his wife, they left the church in April-ish, and it was just a clean cut. And they were the first ones to do it. They said, our whole family is out. Social issues, LGBT issues were a huge part of it for both of them, but particularly for my brother's wife, Brittany. And history was a huge deal for my brother, Cameron. There was a moment speaking with a member of Katie's family that I was introduced to the idea of gaslighting for the first time, where very early in 2017, Cameron had talked about the rock and the hat, and he had walked me through that logical process of like, man, they carried these plates around and inscribed them for a millennia, for 1,000 years they did this. And just for Moroni to hike them all the way up to New York and bury them in the hill, and then they're pulled out of the ground, and now he finally has them, and he doesn't use them. He doesn't use the plates. He uses this seer stone. And I remember having a conversation with Katie was there, and saying, my brother's leaving the church. And why? Well, it's some history issues. And well, what's one of them? And I'm like, well, and I told him the rock seer stone. Well, didn't he know that growing up? No, I didn't. Like, you didn't? Katie, did you? No, I didn't either. well, you just must not have been paying attention that Sunday. Those words came out, and it was like, oh shoot, this is how it's going to be, type of thing. It was a little taste of things.
Okay, so you're saying you told your family first, but didn't tell hers? Is that what you said? Did I hear that right?
On my family kind of knew because my brother left.
See, I just want to say, having a father/grandfather die,
right,
makes it a totally different thing discussing a faith crisis, because everybody's hanging on to the gospel as the way that they're going to see dad or grandpa again, or husband.
Right.
And so that's really intense.
Yeah. And it was my side of the family that started leaving the church.
Right.
In 2017. Because
you had at least one ally.
At least one.
Brother,
right. And then a few months after that, my sister had a son that came out as gay. And her husband was bishop just a few months prior.
Oh, my goodness.
Just a few months prior to his son coming out. He had served a full 5 years and was released.
Well, 3 years, I think.
Oh, well, they served shorter in back east, I guess.
I think they combined 2 wards. It's neither here
nor
there.
That's right. I don't know all the details. But they tried hard to reconcile that and ultimately decided to support their son and just couldn't make it work. So they left as well.
So that's 3 Mount siblings all leaving in the course of a year?
Yeah.
This got to be hard. It has to be hard.
A fourth as well. So 4 out of 6.
That can't have been fun for your mom.
No, and that's the hardest part. I mean,
and the other 2 believing siblings.
Yeah, it's super hard. My oldest brother, Jason, whose 50th birthday is today, he's the current bishop of the ward that 4 of my siblings live in. And my mom is in
Atlanta.
Yeah,
they all live in the Atlanta ward.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Carrollton, Utah.
He's a doctor. He's a doctor.
He's a doctor. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
He's and I'll tell you what, you want to describe as a post-Mormon someone that you would trust your family to be in the ward of what kind of bishop and what kind of characteristics you want in your bishop, and he's who you would describe. He's a very empathetic, very loving, very caring man, and so nothing but great respect for him.
Well, that's great.
There hasn't been any, there's difficulties, particularly with my mom, and no afraid. We're very respectful, but we clearly disagree. It's been extremely difficult, understandably so, for her. And for us, we just kind of go, we're not doing this to hurt you. I swear, we're not doing this to spite you. I'm so sorry. There's a feeling of if my dad never would have gotten hit by the car, none of this would have happened. And so let's blame her. Helen is her name. And it's just like, I didn't leave because of that, but it maybe left me emotionally receptive to other ideas.